Hello and welcome to today's meeting of Democrats of Greater Tucson. My name is Larry Bodine. I'm the president and I'll be your host today. And we have a special guest today. We have Charlie Fisher from the Arizona Democratic Party. Charlie, give us a wave. Everybody here is really anxious to hear what you're up to these days and how we can support you. Let me tell you a little bit more about our speaker today, Charlie Fisher. Charlie has been the executive director of the Arizona Democratic Party since November 2020. He's been active in local and state politics since 2013. He first got involved in campaigns when Greg Stanton was running for re-election in 2015. Since then, Charlie has managed a legislative campaign. He's worked for the Arizona Education Association, and he's fought to protect the Affordable Care Act with the Children's Action Alliance. From 2018 to 2020, he led the ADLCC, which is the Arizona Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. This is the committee that is organized to flip the legislature. We only need 2 seats in the House and 2 seats in the Senate, and then the Democrats have complete control. And with the possible election of Katie Hobbs, it might be a Democratic trifecta. So he worked as the executive director for the legislative program, as well as the candidate services and political director. And Charlie, one of the things I want to hear from you is, Karen Fann, the Senate president, who's a Republican, is running for re-election. And what are the prospects we can get rid of her and the cyber ninjas as well?
Good afternoon to the Democrats of Greater Tucson. I am really excited to be here. So I'm happy to address that in a little bit, Larry. I kind of wanted to, and thank you for the intro. I think political party work is really, really difficult, right? We are this massive coalition, even just here in Arizona, of volunteers, of staff, of leaders, elected officials, who we have to keep together, right? And keep moving in the same direction and really stay focused on the goal as at hand. And that can be incredibly challenging because unlike Republicans, we are not a group of, sort of homogenous individuals who have really similar interests or agree on everything, or frankly are just willing to fall in line, right? If leadership or someone in power says so. And so that is a constant battle. But I think, my firm belief as someone who is really, really in love with our state here. And it took me, frankly, leaving Arizona and coming back to realize how incredible this place is. But I firmly believe that if you love a place and if you're committed to a place, the best thing that you can do is to fight every single day to make it even better and to bring it even closer to the ideal and sort of the vision that we all share. Just some quick updates. I will admit, I'm not sure how many of you were at the state committee meeting on Saturday. When this was initially scheduled, you all were going to get a sneak preview of my remarks, but it turns out after the fact that we had to move it up. And so I hope I'm not repeating myself too much, but happy to dig into any of these topics and take any questions as well. So like Larry said, I have been the executive director here since mid-November of 2020. I was the interim. It was difficult time to transition into this role. We were still really fighting tooth and nail over some really, really close legislative races. We were in full ballot cure, legal territory. And so it was an interesting time to sort of move and sort of have my feet in both worlds. But I think, since March, when I was officially named the executive director, the single biggest programmatic push that we've made here at the state party is establishing a permanent statewide organizing program, which I hope you all have heard about to some degree. That is called Project 1530, and we officially launched on August 1st. 1530 is a nod to our 15 counties and 30 legislative districts here in Arizona. And it is something that is certainly not groundbreaking. I am not the only person or the first person who has thought of this idea. But I think knowing something is important and actually expending the both financial and political capital that it takes to get these things started are two very different things. And so I am really, really excited to announce that as of August 1st, really since July 15th, we have had 9 organizers under Project 1530. They are all Arizonans. For the most part, were born and raised in the communities that they are now organizing in. And the goal, we still need to fill one spot for our Western Arizona region, that is Mojave and La Paz County. But these folks are absolutely incredible. And I think this is certainly not a silver bullet, but a really important missing piece to really build our statewide infrastructure and capacity everywhere, sort of regardless of whether you're in a really competitive district, whether you're in a conservative district or progressive. We need to be competing everywhere. We need to be, growing our ranks everywhere. And I think 1530 is the main vehicle that we can accomplish that. And so while the program will look a little bit different in terms of the specifics based on your region, what works well in Apache and Navajo County is probably not going to be the exact same thing that works well here in Mojave or here in Maricopa or down in Pima. And so we want to make sure there's flexibility so that we are doing regionally and culturally appropriate and effective tactics and strategies. That said, the goals are the same across our state, right? We want to make sure that the Arizona Democratic Party is in the business incredible 501c3 organizations here who do voter registration, but they're not affiliated with either party. And so they don't really have an interest in trying to register Democrats, trying to register progressives, which is what we need to do. We need to continue to change the electorate and grow the Democratic share, and then focus on turning those people out, right? Independence will be the key to success for statewide candidates for quite some time here. But the more Democrats we can grow and the more consistently we can turn those folks out, we make the math problem for our statewide candidates that much more solvable and achievable by making sure that they only have to win 57% of independent or no party voters versus the 70%, right? Which is incredibly challenging, if not impossible. So voter registration is the first thing. We also want to sort of move away from the transactional boom and bust cycle of campaigns, right? Where folks really ramp up 6 months, 8 months before the election, just, drive themselves, ragged, trying to meet their numbers and knocking on doors and making phone calls. And then everybody leaves on November 15th or December 1st, right? And either goes home to their state or goes back and finds a different job. We want to make sure that we're doing this all the time and that we're engaging communities, whether or not there's an election. I think one of our challenges as a party has been that we engage communities, specifically lower income communities and communities of color, only when we need something, right? We assume support and we show up and we ask for a vote, we ask for a volunteer shift or $1, but we don't do sort of the really long-term work of building trust, of having a really deep understanding of the issues and the challenges that folks in these communities face every day. And so that is another prong in the 1530 portfolio. And then the last, and not the last, this is not exhaustive, but the other sort of big piece is volunteer recruitment, right? The party is people at the end of the day, right? It's the executive board, it's our PCs, it's everyone in between. And we need more people in the fold. And so we want to be recruiting volunteers all the time and training those folks and bringing them up. I mean, I was a volunteer at one point, right, when I got involved, and that is the potential. Our chairwoman, who of course now is an elected official, is currently a state representative, soon to be a state senator, and the chair of our party. That is the power of every single volunteer recruitment phone call. Every conversation that you have with an ally could be the future governor, could be the future chair of our party, or the future executive director. And so we want to get back into that all the time, regardless of the campaign cycle. And then lastly, is we want to lead with the legislative candidates everywhere. I think that is sort of the missing piece when it comes to when we flip into really campaign and electoral mode. The top of the ticket is well covered with the coordinated campaign. They do a great job. They have huge teams and they talk to a lot of voters. Legislative candidates in targeted districts have ADLCC and that invests and puts these comprehensive staff structures and makes sure that they're raising money and talking to the right voters and really provides hands-on support. But if you're a legislative candidate in LD14, in LD2 or LD3, right, where the chances of us winning are either really, really good, almost guaranteed, or of us losing are almost guaranteed, there's really not much that you can tap into outside of, your county. And we know that our county parties, we have some really strong ones. We have some that are, younger and need some development. And so we want to make sure that Project 1530 organizers are organizing and leading canvases and phone banks and text banks in every single legislative district after the primary, of course, for compliance reasons, but that we're really driving turnout from the bottom of the ticket to the top. And I think that's another tool to really build our party. So that is a brief update on Project 1530. As has been mentioned here, we are also in the middle of redistricting. This has been an interesting process, right? I was not around 10 years ago when we, I think, did an incredible job with the 2011 commission. I will say we have a fantastic team of folks and a large team internally that are focused on redistricting and have been for almost 2 years at this point. Franny Sharp is our elections director who leads the effort. We've got our data team led by Chris Current. We have some field staff that are working on making sure we have volunteers going to all of these redistricting meetings and really making their voices heard. And then we have lawyers, data consultants. Our former elections director from 10 years ago is under contract with us. And we're coordinating every single step with both local and national organizations that focus solely on this. So it really is a sort of comprehensive and collaborative effort. And we're in the home stages. And I know folks have mentioned it before, and I know these most recent meetings were scheduled very late, but your participation and your advocacy is so important. And I think at the end of the day, all that we want, we don't need gerrymandered maps, right? We don't need maps that really like pack conservatives into the smallest number of districts and give us the a 2-to-1 advantage. We just want fair. We just want a fair playing field. We just want fair maps. And we want to make sure that the commission is prioritizing competitiveness as required by the Constitution. And so really those are the two biggest talking points, if you will, is we want fair maps and we want competitive maps. Really our priority is protecting VRA districts, Voting Rights Act districts. Districts that are overwhelmingly or majority communities of color should remain that way, so that communities of color have an opportunity to elect individuals who represent their communities and ideally are from them. So there's a handful of Voting Rights Act districts across the state, and then making sure that these competitive districts really give either party a chance to win and make sure that the contest is in the general election, not in the primary. And so those are sort of the two big pieces when it comes to redistricting. You all will have seen last Friday, after many months of uncertainty and the moving of the goalposts, like Larry mentioned, the cyber ninjas came out with their audit report. I will admit I had a bit of schadenfreude on Thursday evening when the report was leaked ahead of time. And lo and behold, the state Senate did everything in their power to find Trump apologists and allies to prove that there was voter fraud and widespread, inaccuracy and flaws in the system. And lo and behold, they found 360 extra votes for Joe Biden in Maricopa County. And so that struck me as some real poetic justice after all of the money months and millions of dollars that have been spent on this sham. I will caveat that by saying we are not out of the woods. The Republican Party will still use this report next legislative session, next January, to push even more restrictive voter suppression bills. There were a handful, and I know Lucy referenced the referendums that are just in the closing stages. There were a handful of suppression bills that were passed, but some of the most egregious ones actually didn't make it through the process. And so we should all steel ourselves and prepare for those to return next January. And there's a very good chance that some of those will pass and will make our work even more difficult next year. Back in April, before this sort of charade had started in earnest, we filed a lawsuit with the state Supreme Court and asked for an injunction to stop the audit from proceeding, and went back and forth and ultimately signed a settlement agreement that delivered some real wins for transparency. At the time, you could only be on the floor of the Coliseum if you were signed up to volunteer as a ballot counter. The judge ruled that elections observers, like subject matter experts, could be on the floor monitoring the process without volunteering. He mandated that the media had to have access to the entire process again without having to volunteer. And I want to give a shout out to the media here. They have done an incredible job of really looking at this through a critical lens and a skeptical lens from the beginning. And I'm proud that we played a small role in getting those folks there. And the judge also mandated that they had to follow every policy and procedure that was put forth by elections officials. And so that allowed the Secretary of State to not only have observers there, but to really in real time build a comprehensive report of all of the endless issues that were employed in the policy security issues from the beginning of this audit. We also, just a couple of weeks ago, sent a debarment letter to the Arizona Department of Administration to ask the governor and Andy Tobin, the administrative DOA director, to debar the cyber ninjas and make sure that they can never take another single dollar of Arizona taxpayer money after what they have done to sow discord and distrust in our democratic institutions. I'll be honest, we don't have a lot of faith that Governor Ducey or Andy Tobin are going to do the right thing on this, but regardless, we felt that it had to be said, and someone needed to stand up for the taxpayers and the voters of Arizona. So that's sort of where we're at with the audit. The report came out last week. It sounds like other states are likely going to follow the lead of the cyber ninjas and maybe take on their own audits. So unfortunately, we are not at the end of this, but I think that the big priority moving forward should make sure that we've got all eyes on the legislative session next year, and that we are really making our voices heard when more suppression bills are introduced and making their way through the process. And then I will close, because I already feel like I've been talking at you all for a long time, by just saying I'm here at the state party, and I'm really, really excited to be here. Larry talked a little bit about the opportunity that we have at hand. It really is incredible, and I know it can be just sort of reading the news can be really discouraging. It has been a very, very difficult year, both here in state and across the country and across the world, between the Delta surge, between wildfires and floods and droughts, between what we've seen at the border with immigrants being treated horrifically. And I want to end by saying this is our moment. We have talked about being a battleground state for many years, and it is official. We are in this position. And if we can keep our coalition together, if we can really stay focused on the work, we have an opportunity to flip the state legislature for the first time since 1966, to deliver a Democratic trifecta with the election of a Democratic governor, to retain and hopefully grow our U.S. Senate majority and give the Biden and Harris administration an actual working Senate majority to pass their agenda. And also to retain our majority in the U.S. Congress and in the U.S. House. And none of those things can happen without us being successful here. And so I hope that is motivating and encouraging and energizing. I know it energizes me. There's going to be difficult days ahead, but we really are in the driver's seat. And if we can turn our folks out, if we make sure that Democrats don't stay home just because Biden is the president, we have an incredible opportunity to dramatically change the direction of our state and to change the balance of power and start playing some offense for a change. And I, for one, would really welcome that opportunity to have a Speaker of the House, a Democratic Speaker of the House, a Democratic state Senate leader with a Democratic governor working together, passing policies that are really going to make our state inclusive and value the dignity of all of our communities. So, Larry, I will pass it back to you, and you can tell me where to go next.
All right, well, we're going to take some questions, and I'm just dying to ask you my question again about Karen Fann. She's, according to the press, considering not running again. And to the extent that you do target districts, is Karen Fann on the target list? And also Wendy Rogers. She's a legislator from LD6. She's a white supremacist. She supports the Oath Keepers in the January 6th riot. She supports the Trump big lie that he won. Tell us about some specific targets if you can.
Sure. So I will caveat all of this by saying we don't know, right? And we won't know until the end of this year at the earliest, more than likely in mid or towards the end of January, what the final districts look like. Having this conversation based off of the 2020 maps, I think, is still constructive. Just to be completely frank, our goal is to retain the status quo as much as possible in terms of the lines. We feel like we have really good maps. Their population change is giving us an opportunity to win. And so we won't know for sure. Based off of our current lines, Karen Fann's district is the second most conservative district in the state. It is about a 32 DPI, Democratic Performance, which is just sort of a shorthand that we use for competitiveness. Essentially means if you've got generic Republican versus generic Democrat in a head-to-head matchup, you could expect the Democrat to get around 32, 33% of the vote. So no, it's unlikely that we will be able to defeat Karen Fann with a Democrat in re-election. And so the best that we can do is really focus our efforts on flipping the legislature. So she is at best the Senate minority leader and not the president of the state Senate. That is certainly the dream. Whether or not she runs for re-election, a Democrat's chances of winning an LD1 are mathematically close to impossible. So LD6 is a different story. LD6 was a targeted district for both of my cycles that I led the ADLCC. We had some really incredible candidates in 2020 alone. Coral Evans, who was the mayor of Flagstaff, and Felicia French ran historic, truly historic campaigns. Both raised over $750,000. They were both on cable TV. I mean, these were congressional level campaigns. And they fell victim to, I think, what a lot of folks did last year, which is there was a real surge in Republican turnout that no one saw coming. Really low efficacy Republicans turned out in record numbers. Independents did not sort of wholesale reject Republicans, right? I think that what we saw is that they voted for Mark Kelly and Joe Biden in many instances, and then sort of reverted back to their standard Republican voting behavior. And so this was this combination of the best of both worlds for down ballot Republicans, is that they weren't tarred with the Trump brush necessarily. They benefited from this turnout, but they also still were able to win independent support. So Wendy Rogers won a lot more comfortably than we were expecting, which is incredibly discouraging because, to your point, Larry, even Republicans who represent marginally Republican districts, competitive districts, are some of the most extreme people that we've ever had at the legislature. And we need to make sure that we're focused on those.
Okay, we've got a question from Susie Anderson. Susie, go right ahead.
My question is, do you think Mark Finchem will get his way to have a recount of the Pima County election in 2020?
It's a good question, Susie. I don't know if I have a great answer for you. I would hope not. I think that after what we have seen and what this has put, frankly, the Republican Party through, is something that they're going to want to avoid doing again moving forward. I think the most likely chance, I know Karen Fann has, if she hasn't already, is going to ask Mark Brnovich to open up an investigation, the AG's office to open up an investigation. I think it will likely focus on whether or not the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors was, cooperative enough with the state Senate and their vendors and sort of subcontractors. I would not bet that Mark Finchem is going to be successful in getting the Pima Dems, and I think we've got a lot more champions on the Pima Board of Supervisors than we do on the Maricopa Board of Supervisors. So I think that is another sort of bulwark against that, but I can't say for sure.
Thank you.
We have a question from Janice Porter, all the way from Legislative District 9. Janice, go ahead.
The best legislative district in the state. Charlie, I was glad to hear you mention building community rather than asking for people's votes and then not talking to them again until the next election. And I think that the move to get the petition signed, it was a really good opportunity to bring people into the Democratic Party to talk to them about what we were doing. And the state party was nowhere to be found. It's my understanding that organizers were told that it was not an appropriate thing for the state party to be involved in organizing those petition signings. And I wonder how you would respond to that.
So the party supported both at our last state committee meeting, voted to support and endorse both the Invest in Arizona Now and the Arizona Deserves Better initiative. And so we did send out almost daily in our daily digest to our biggest list, and directed folks to the campaigns and to the opportunities. And like you said, several of the county parties played a really sort of leading role in organizing their regions. We're very much in the building mode stage of Project 1530. And so we were not in a place where we could sort of redirect all of our staff capacity to really just focusing on the petitions. And so we did what we could within our means to make sure that folks were aware and that we were driving people and making sure they understood the timeline and returning their petitions. And I know it was mentioned several times at the state committee meeting on Saturday. So I think that that's probably the biggest difference, is that we just had hired our organizers. We're really focused on getting those folks trained up and making sure that they have the the sustainable sort of lasting skills that they need to do this work year round. And so I understand that there was some frustration that we didn't sort of direct as much staff resources as some probably would have liked to the referendum efforts. But I really want to focus on making sure that Project 1530 is a success in the long term. And I was really hesitant to sort of ask everyone to drop everything and just focus on the referendums for the couple of weeks. So probably not the answer that you wanted, but that is the honest.
No, definitely not, but thanks for your honesty.
Of course.
All right, we have a question from Shirley Muni, and there you are. Go right ahead, Shirley.
My question is, what is all this about the vote of no confidence in Kyrsten Sinema?
Sure. So yeah, some members of the Progressive Caucus had drafted a resolution that did pass with about 80% of the vote on Saturday. It was sort of, to be honest, a bit of a rehashing of a resolution that we had passed in May, which made the party's official position on the filibuster really clear, which is that we believe that it needs to be reformed, if not outright abolished, because it is standing in the way of legislative progress. Some folks from the Progressive Caucus drafted a new resolution that was considered and then passed on Saturday that essentially reaffirmed our position on the filibuster and laid out some fairly specific requests of Senator Sinema. It was about voting rights, it was about reconciliation, and ultimately about her position on the filibuster. And I guess, for lack of a better word, it was an ultimatum that says if the senator doesn't vote for those things and doesn't change her position on at least reforming the filibuster, then it empowered the ADP chair and executive board to pass a vote of no confidence ahead of the 2024 election. To be totally honest with you, Shirley, what that actually means in practice, I don't know, and it makes me a little nervous. If the party finds itself in a position where Kyrsten Sinema happens to be our nominee in 2024 and we have passed a vote of no confidence in her, I don't know what that does to our campaign efforts. I fear that it could completely sideline the party. And so I hope that we don't find ourselves in that position. And so I think we need to dig in with our rules chair and bylaws folks to really get a more clear understanding on what a potential vote of no confidence would mean in terms of the operations.
Well, two questions to follow up on that. One, have you heard back from her in any way? And number two, is there a primary challenger against her in the offing?
We have not heard from her since Saturday. I expect we will, but I know the Senate is in session right now, and it is going to be a wild week on Capitol Hill between infrastructure, reconciliation, and the debt ceiling needing to be lifted. And in terms of challengers, I have not heard names. I think there's certainly a good chance that someone comes forward. But my focus at this point is laser on November 2022. If in a perfect world, I would have loved to hold that resolution until January of 2023 when we come together. But I understand it's an important issue. It's one that we're very focused on, and rightly so. So that's sort of where things stand on that front.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Right, Dr. Barbara Warren, go ahead and unmute yourself.
How can we support the International Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty?
There, as you know, Dr. Warren, there's no silver bullet, right, when it comes to addressing the climate crisis, and we have to do a little bit of everything. My personal belief, as someone who is really, really passionate about the potential of solar energy and Arizona's role when it comes to really driving investment and development of solar, is we need to be the solar capital, right? And this is such an easy sell if we can get the messaging right and convince voters that this is a really, really critical issue for the future of our state. So I think that is sort of between solar energy and deploying it, water conservation, and sort of the future of desert cities and desert communities. And I think really framing it as both an economic development and a health issue strikes me as the most compelling way. Everyone cares about the economy, about the ability to have jobs. And as we are sort of taking some of these fossil fuel plants offline, largely in northern Arizona, we need to be doubling down in those communities who have largely been the most negatively impacted by fossil fuel industries, and make sure that we're not leaving those folks high and dry, and that we're giving them an opportunity to learn job skills and trades in the renewable energy industry, and what that can do for our statewide economy. And so I think you're right. We've got a long way to go. And my personal belief is that the first step in moving in that direction is by electing Democratic majorities in the legislature and a Democratic governor who are going to champion those issues, along with an AG, Secretary of State, and Corporation Commission, who really own and manage utility regulation on a daily basis.
I agree with all of that. Gabby Giffords campaigned on making Arizona the solar capital a long time ago.
Yes.
We're getting there, but there's a whole lot else that needs to be done. Like our transportation system needs to be taken off of fossil fuels. We need to get rid of gas. We need to deal with a whole lot of different aspects of our environment that we need to ask our candidates to focus on. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And I know in the infrastructure framework, there's funding for a high-speed rail between Phoenix and Tucson.
Great.
Which is so exciting. I wish it were done years ago. And it is things like that, right? Investing in light rail, investing in multimodal transport, making bike lanes, right? I personally am very passionate. I've got an electric bike and I love commuting on my e-bike, right? It is so much better than driving and sitting in traffic. But the infrastructure is horrible, and it's genuinely dangerous for me to try to ride my bike to work instead of car. So I think it's making sure that we're giving people options. And I agree. I mean, I think it has to start with American leadership in order to, have a legitimate voice on the international stage.
Thank you.
We have a question from Lucy Messing. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Lucy.
Hi, Charlie. Good to see you. My question is about the number of representatives and senators that will not be returning to our state legislature. So that does concern me. You could speak a little bit to that about how we're going to work with that, and I don't know if you're sharing actual numbers of how many Democrats and how many Republicans, but I think the majority of those not returning are Democrats.
It's a great question, Lucy, and great to see you. I think it adds just another layer of sort of uncertainty that needs to be managed and needs to be addressed immediately. Like you said, whether it's folks running for Congress, like in CG2 down in your neck of the woods with Senator Engel and Representative Hernandez. Still not sure what Representative Freese is going to do now that he's suspended his congressional campaign, but really hoping he comes back to the legislature. Or, Representative Lieberman, Bolding, Rodriguez. There are, I think last count, I believe there's nine legislative vacancies on the Democratic side. And so we are working closely with our counties and legislative districts in those areas to make sure that we're appointing people who come from the community, right, who represent the district and can speak to voters in that district and are committed to running for re-election. Because you're right, it is not a guarantee for sure if you are appointed to a legislative seat that you're going to win re-election. We've seen that happen several times. But I think it does give folks a little bit of a leg up. And I think we know with redistricting that we're going to have to play a little bit more defense than we have in years past at the legislative level. And so we really want to make sure that we're focused on getting these appointments handled, getting really strong nominees to the boards of supervisors in a timely manner so that these folks can get in, hit the ground running, understand how the legislature works, which is as you know, a difficult and frustrating experience for everyone in the minority. And make sure that they're focused on campaigning and all of that sort of without being able to say like, hey, Lucy, you're going to be in LD9 next year and it's going to be a 50, it just adds another layer of challenge. So we're working really, really closely with ADLCC, with Liz Luna and our attorneys to make sure that the system and the process itself is really clear and that chairs have guidance on sort of the timing and how to do the voting and who is eligible and things like that. And we're getting those names to the Board of Supervisors and making sure that we're not losing any ground in these districts that have some open seats. So, yeah.
Thanks. We just had our vote to fill Kyrsten's seat yesterday. LD10 voted on 3 names to send. And what is the time frame in terms of we're going to send, or our chair will send the names to Raquel?
Yep.
And then she then sends them back to our Board of Supervisors.
That's right. Yep. And then the Board of Supervisors have to choose from those 3 names. since we're out of session, we have 21 days from receipt of the official resignation letter. So once the Senate President sent Engel's resignation letter to the Secretary of State, it came to us. That's when the 21-day clock starts for us to forward the 3 names to the Board of Supervisors. I think they have a little bit more flexibility in terms of when they actually make the decision. It took the Maricopa Board of Supervisors an additional 2 weeks to fill the vacancy from in LD 30.
Mhm.
But yeah, the next step is the LD10 chair sends them to Chair Tehran. She forwards it to the Board of Supervisors, and then it's in their control when and who to choose for the appointment.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we have a question from Marlene Bluestein from my favorite LD, LD9. Go ahead, Marlene.
It was my understanding that many of those local organizers in other counties were advised that they should not participate in the petition. I'm having a hard time understanding why the state party would not have aggressively wanted to particularly address these things.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't have too much more to add on the referendums. The reality is we did what we could. I apologize that it wasn't as much as folks would have liked. I totally understand and appreciate that. I think in the future, we will definitely be much better equipped to play maybe a little bit more hands-on role in issues like that. But I really was sort of focused on the long game. And so feel free to blame me. I'm more than happy to be the bad guy here. We were really impressed. We made sure that our folks were aware. We continued to sort of talk about it internally and make sure folks were aware of the campaigns as they were happening. But really it was about training. It was about, really doing one-on-ones in their community, making sure these folks understand how to do a great recruitment call, how to do a great one-on-one, how to utilize the van, so that we're building a strong foundation of skills to push forward with Project 1530 and make sure this thing is not only a success this year, but that we're in a position to expand it next year. We currently have an organizer whose region is 4 counties: Graham, Greenlee, Cochise, and Santa Cruz. And that was done a bit out of necessity. And I fully recognize that that's not possible for one person to organize 4 counties, even as they're all neighbors, effectively. And so we want to make sure that each county within reason has at least one dedicated organizer next year, so they can really build those relationships, really do volunteer recruitment and make sure that ledge candidates everywhere have really, really great infrastructure that they can tap into. But we did have to make some sacrifices this year in order to build for the long term.
Okay, we've got a question from Andrea Kennedy. Go ahead, Andrea.
I would really like some hope for being able to flip the legislature up in Phoenix. I wondered if you could expand on this a little. Thank you.
There is an incredible amount of hope, right? I am not going to lie to you all. We know what history shows about midterm elections, right? The party in power usually struggles in the first midterm, really in both midterms, if we're able to retain the presidency. And so that is our charge for the next 14 months here, is making sure that Democrats aren't complacent. Just the math problem of there being fewer Democrats than Republicans and independents not turning out nearly at the rate of registered partisans. But it's really important that we continue to engage our Democratic friends, our volunteers, and lower efficacy Democratic voters to make a strong case for the importance of 2022 elections. Because if we're able to match our 2018 turnout or even get close to it, we can change our state. We can give the Biden and Harris administration a working majority at the federal level to pass their priorities. And I think one thing that gives me a little bit of hope is also kind of sad, but seeing the Republican Party be completely captured by a disgraced, one-term, twice impeached former president, and leaning in, essentially internalizing every wild conspiracy theory that even him and his team know are not true, and make that their litmus test, gives us a really great opportunity for the general election next November. If you are Carrie Lake and you are the gubernatorial nominee and you have been talking about making sure that we are the next Texas and that we are empowering violent vigilantes to attack their neighbors for trying to access healthcare, if you want to decertify an election because you don't like the outcome, if you are so hostile to science and truth and facts, I think it's really difficult to pivot to seem moderate or to appeal to those in the middle. And that's, unfortunately, until we change the math, that's what's going to need to be done to run successful statewide campaigns in Arizona. And I think that gives us an incredible opportunity, but it won't happen unless we do our work and make sure that we're registering Democrats, that they are volunteering, and that we are turning folks out at an incredible number next November.
So you're talking about appealing to moderates? Did you say that? I'm sorry. I wasn't sure.
Independents.
Okay.
Yeah. Some are moderates for sure. I think, we all know that every registered independent is not some, hardened centrist that wants to split their ticket. They exist on a spectrum like we all do. But for those folks that are truly in the middle, that are up for grabs, we need to be turning our folks out at high numbers so that our statewide nominees can really make the case about why they're the best person to lead our state moving forward in a way that's compelling to those folks.
Thank you.
Charlie, I want to thank you very much for your presentation today. It was very informative and enlightening. And for me as a Democrat, very encouraging. We've run out of time, so I'm sure we could keep you here all afternoon. So I'm sorry, Joe and Michael, we've run out of time for your questions. Charlie, would you explain how people can get a hold of you, how we can find out more about the 1530 campaign, and what we can do to support you?
Yes, absolutely. So I will throw my email in the chat. Folks, please feel free to reach out to me directly. I am always here. I don't really have much by days off at this point. So please feel free to reach out. And if I don't have the answer to your specific question, or if there's a better person, I will connect you with the staff or individual who is. And in terms of Project 1530, absolutely. The best thing that you can do is go to mobilize.us/Project 1530. Just put that in the chat as well, and find an event in your community. We are really starting to ramp this up. Like I mentioned, this is our first week of action this week. And so we'll be sort of interspersing community service events. Today was a neighborhood cleanup. I know there was one in Pima County, I think at 8 o'clock this morning, and voter registration events. While this is the first, it will certainly not be the last. And Mobilize is the best place to find information. You can plug in your zip code or your city, and it will populate events near you. And if you sign up, you'll receive sort of text reminders, you'll get some follow-ups, and make sure that you can really participate and make this thing a success. And that really is my single greatest ask. Of course, we always need money. We always need, the resources to be able to make sure folks are paid and that we're able to do all of the different things that we need to do. But the single most important thing by far is to get involved, to whether it's your LD, your county party, Project 1530. They are all important. They all do incredible work, and we're all in the same fight together. So please volunteer. I know I'm preaching to the choir in groups like these, but volunteer and bring 3 to 5 friends. And that's how we're going to flip Arizona next November.
All right, Charlie, thank you very much. We're all counting on you. Of course, we all support you.
Thanks, everyone.
We have a few announcements. Why don't we go first with you, Kathy? Tell us about joining DGT.
Okay, folks, there's still a couple of you online there that aren't officially members. I know you like to take advantage of our meetings, and just like PBS, you don't have to join, but to join shows your commitment. Charlie, it's only $20, and that'll take care of you for the whole year.
That's
and
right.
I know you want to join too. Just go online to the Democrats of Greater Tucson.org and join right up. It's the place to be. So that's my spiel for today's meeting, Larry. I'll send it right back to you.
Awesome. Well, I will call on Sandy Binion. Tell us about what's coming up.
Okay, well, thank you, Charlie, for agreeing to speak today. Next week, we have Nathan Davis, who is running for the state legislature from what is presently LD9. Who knows? what it'll be or what parts of it'll be after the first of the year. Then the following week, we have Dr. McCullen, who's the head of the Pima County Health Department. And the week after that, we have Aaron Lieberman, who is running for governor of Arizona. So we've got good things coming up.
All right, sounds great. Let's go over to Christina Early. We've got a happy hour on Wednesday. Fill us in all about that.
So y'all know about our Drinking Democratically. We are going to be meeting again this Wednesday. Now, I do know that there's a conflict with the redistricting committee. We had this planned with Augustine's Kitchen downtown several weeks ago, and we just didn't have any way of changing this. So we get it. The redistricting is really important. If you're going to go to that and you get done and you want to swing by, we'll be there from 4 to 6. And I do recommend everybody, there's not been a lot of information that I know of about the redistricting meeting, but I'm sure that there is a way to submit your comments online so that we can be a part of the process, because it is important. And then come by the Augustine Kitchen and tell us how it went. This is the only way we could do this, and I feel bad about the conflict, but we do appreciate Augustine Kitchen allowing us to use their banquet room. As everybody knows, when we go there, we don't have servers. We go to the bar, we order our food, order our drinks. They bring the food out to us. We've been there twice. This will be our third time, and we've always had a good time. So in the chat, I have the registration link. So I hope y'all will click on that and join us. We'll have a good time. And all the information is in that link about where it is and how to get registered. Thanks so much. It looks like Lucy Messing has her hand up.
Yes, she does. Lucy, fill us in on what's happening.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for all they did for the petitions. We've worked really hard for a few months, and I'm confident it's going to pay off. So thank you, everyone. I know so many of you participated because I checked in so many of your petitions. So big thanks. And my second thing is I'm starting to make announcements for Arizona List. They have a guest speaker tomorrow. It is Zoom. So Maria Teresa Kumar, who is the president and CEO of Vota Latino, will be giving a presentation on voter issues tomorrow night. Let me see if it's at 5 or, okay, yeah, it is at 5 o'clock tomorrow. So if you go to arizonalist.org, they'll have that information if you want to RSVP and join in on that conversation. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. We have an announcement from Susie Anderson. Go right ahead, Susie.
Thank you, Larry. I just wanted to mention that the Women's March is happening in Tucson next Saturday morning, 10 a.m. at the Armory Park. And they're going to march, actually, all the way up to the library. Okay, and they will have time for speakers. And so wear your blue women's stuff, make a poster, show up, please. And let's fight these awful people who just think a woman's body just belongs to everybody but herself. So thank you.
And with that, we've run out of time, so I will bring the meeting to a close, and we'll see you at the happy hour on Wednesday. Bye-bye for now.